So I have done a little bit of work on this project. The project being a stream slash video management application slash platform that I started working on a few weeks ago. And the last several coding streams have been about this project. So last time, 2 days ago, we had started working on APIs for React Admin to call into to be able to create, retrieve, update, and delete records, aka CRUD. So there were some challenges there, some things that I had an inclination for how I wanted to accomplish that, and it didn't seem that Diesel, the query builder tool library that we were using in Rust to do the database queries, was really well fitting for making kind of a general purpose. I have this set of tables and I want to make similar queries, and I want to use data to define kind of the information I want to retrieve. And then I want to use data to define the mapping between the shape of the data from the database and the API response. So that didn't seem to work all that well. And it's kind of what I talk about here and in my note that I kind of wrote up before this so I would have something to say. So instead, we're going to take a different tack. And this is what I was experimenting with after the stream on Sunday, is instead of kind of taking a data-defined approach, instead just writing endpoints for each resource. Fortunately, we don't have a bunch of different types of data. We have video clips, streams, episodes, transcripts, and topics. And I think there's one more. So like 5 or 6 different kinds of records, and they are all a bit different. They're not all the same. They have different fields. There will be other things that we'll need to pull in, doing joins or what have you in the database query. There are things that will need to be defined. For this small of an application, it's probably going to be less work just to write the separate endpoints than to try to make a general purpose system. But I'm so used to having or making in a bigger context kind of a general purpose system. That's kind of the first place I went. So that was probably not a direction that makes sense for this now. And maybe in some point in the future it will, and we can change course, rewrite it. The fact of the matter is that when you're writing software, you are, in many cases, going to have requirements that change over time and kind of scope, and sometimes it's just inevitable that you need to write things a simpler way first, and then, one kind of simpler, and then at some point down the line, what kind of simple you're trying to achieve changes. So enough philosophizing about that. The other note was that I kept on running into this issue where I would have a Rust file open. So we have this directory, and we have all of our different microservices in here. We have a AI API that is our GPT OpenAI wrapper. We have our CRUD API, and then we have other APIs that we haven't really started implementing yet, and we have a common API lib. It was seeing this issue where we'd open a file in one of these, and it would, there we go, And it would not give us any kind of type information about the code. It wouldn't give us any kind of linting warnings. Like, we wouldn't see any of these docs if you hover over things. We wouldn't see warnings. We wouldn't see any of this stuff. The Rust Analyzer plugin was not working for us. And in fact, we weren't seeing like this hover over. It didn't seem like the Rust Analyzer was starting or anything. And so I was prepared to say that, okay, well, the solution to that is you open a separate VS Code window for each of your separate crates, right? But I did some Googling, and as it turns out, there's a simpler way that seems to address that issue, and that is just to make a top-level cargo.toml with this workspace section and defining a list of members. And then Rust Analyzer seems to be able to pull in everything. So then not only can we see this warning about dead code, we can also look in AI API and pull open main, and we have our documentation and our run and debug and all that stuff, and it all seems to work. So that's really helpful, and it's going to save me the effort of having to probably kind of what I was imagining I'd have to do if I hadn't discovered this would be to have maybe the overall project open so I could run like VS Code tasks and do stuff with the top level Docker Compose, and then have separate VS Code windows for each of the individual apps. So instead, having that top level cargo toml file seems to address that issue. No, I don't want to save that. Okay, so that's a lot of what happened. There's some other things. So I started, we'll look at this in a second, but I started reworking the implementation of the CRUD API to do what I was just talking about, where we have dedicated endpoints defined for each kind of resource. I went through each of our other microservices and added a README. I think I added this media archive API as well, but there's nothing in here yet other than a README. And the README is actually pretty detailed. It kind of lays out what each microservice does and the kind of API it provides. And what else was relevant? I mean, okay, diesel version upgrade, sure. And then I changed the health check endpoint for the different microservices to be at /health rather than being at the top level endpoint. That seemed to be a good way of going about it. Oh, right. So I added a VS Code task, which I thought might be handy, kind of as we're working on each individual API, rather than trying to update the whole thing and kind of test everything together. If we want, if it's handy, I made this task. It says it's cargo watch, but really I did some Googling, and there's this systemfd thing that can how does this work? I forget. I Googled it. It was a thing that came up, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. I forget the details, but it basically helps run cargo watch, and it and then I set up an input here called service that's a pick string. And so in VS Code, you can go and run a task, and I can select this task here, and it will ask me which service I want to run. And so that I can run CRUD API. Oh, right. Now I remember. Actually, do I? What was the point? What does systemfd do? seems silly to talk about, oh, I used the systemfd thing, and then what was the point of it? Opens a bunch of sockets and passes them to another process that passes dropping connections. Okay. Right. So this is the part that I think I'm missing. Okay, so I think the intent of this systemfd was to be able to provide. Oh, right. It was to provide a port that you could use, and it would be stable even when the service restarts. Examples. Let's take a look at that. Not found. Okay. SOC. Demo. Okay, here we go. With a warp framework. So how does this work? Listen FD. Oh, perhaps we have to. Okay. I think in this case, I don't think the systemfd stuff is actually relevant. Yeah. There we go. Because we need to change the service to be able to listen to the socket that's being passed in. The idea is being that not only do you get, I think Cargo Watch by itself automatically handles restarting the service if there are file changes. Let's see that in action. But then the issue being that if you had an open request, like you were downloading something or uploading something, or you had kind of some kind of long polling using this API, then that thing that I just removed, systemfd, would allow you to preserve that connection somehow, maybe. I'm not sure how that would work. And I don't think I need it. So here you can see it's listening on the port that I've specified here. And then if we go into, yeah, thank you, don't show that again. If we go into here, let's say, and I'll just make a change here. And there we go. And it restarted. And that's all I really needed. It was Cargo Watch. All right, cool. So let's go ahead. Another thing that I'm going to try to do is I had to go back after the fact, but I'm going to try to tag the commits, like the last commit we do on a stream, with the date of the stream, so that we kind of keep track of, what was the final thing we did on stream, because then I can do things like this, where I can look at, here are the things that I've done since the last stream, which is handy for me to kind of be able to pick up the pieces, and might be handy for others, assuming anyone else wants to look at this code. All right, so let's remove systemfd. Oh yeah, I bet. Let's see, generate commit message. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look at the CRUD API. I think kind of once we get one of these fully implemented, the rest of the things should be pretty straightforward to do, and we can kind of just blitz through those, which will be really good. Then we can start looking at figuring out how we're going to integrate our little ChatGPT style UI widget into React Admin. Be able to figure out how we're going to integrate the other microservices into things. All that stuff. Probably somewhere in the middle, we'll need to add Nginx or some kind of reverse proxy to kind of stitch all of our microservice APIs together into a single endpoint. But we'll get to that when we get to it. So let's take a look here at main.rs first. So previously, I had records, and then I had the name of the resource parameterized, right? Like I have down here. These things are going to go away. They're going to change, but this is the idea. You know, one thing that occurs to me, there's a capability with app to merge routes or to nest. What does nest do? Hold on. What does nest do? Ooh. I wonder, is this what I'm looking for? Of course, then if we did that, I guess it would be just slash. Okay. That seems to be at least... Yeah, can't find post. So one of the things I learned is that you don't want to use multiple invocations of the route method for the same route for get and post. Instead, what you want to do is you want to do get and then call .post on it, like this. Yeah, router's not a thing. How do we, I kind of like this style if we can do some kind of nesting here, because then perhaps what we can do, so here's a thought, a question, something to decide upon, yeah, is would we rather have all of the routes defined in a single file and then have the handlers be the thing that we reference? Or would we rather have the different routes for the different kinds of resources defined alongside the handlers? So like we have, maybe in mod.rs, we'd have the routes defined. And then we would just import that. And then, I say import, but we would, we would refer to that and nest that or merge that somehow into the app routes. So I think I am inclined to just have all of the routes defined here for a couple of reasons. Hold on, let me unwind this. I think I lost the line. Yeah, I lost the app there. Okay, there we go. And the reason is, with the current structure anyway, we have this thing called handlers that has all of this logic. Maybe we could rename this to be routes or something, and then that would make sense. But then, I don't know, there's something to be said for having like one place where you see all the routes. I think if we were talking about like 60 kinds of resources or 600, it would be a different story. But I think for this will be okay. So let's take streams. And so right now with streams, we have a get handler and a post handler. So these are to get the list and to create. And so I'm using the same React admin style nomenclature for the names of these functions for the module that contains the handler for the functions. Yeah. So the get on streams is getting the list of all of the streams, and the post is for the creation of that. And so then what we want to do here is we want to have a get one. We already know that we wanted to get one. We also want to update on that same route for put, and we also want a delete. Let's turn on word wrapping. In VS Code, by default, that's Alt-Z. And I kind of wish can that be set on by default? Yeah, great. All right. Was momentarily distracted because I saw something on a different screen change. Okay, so now we have a get, which corresponds to our get one for the record streams ID. We have a put that corresponds to update, and this is wrong. This should be that. Of course, these none of these exist yet, but that's the idea. And now this establishes the pattern, and we don't need these anymore, since we're not going to be implementing kind of generic endpoints. So this set of routes kind of defines the pattern of how we handle the CRUD operations in this API for React Admin. Define routes for RA, what is it, like simple rest something? Hold on, let's see. Not whole word. Come on. I know I refer to it somewhere, right? RA data simple rest, okay. Streams resource. Nope, it's not a special case. It's a good attempt. Copilot, I guess. Okay, so this is all good. We just need to define get one, update, and delete. And so in src handler stream, there's a mod.rs. And so this is where we put in all of the other things. Get one and delete. And now we just need those files, right? Delete.rs and get one.rs and update. Now, maybe we will be able to kind of extract out some of the common things from this code, because otherwise this is going to be like, okay, now we copy all these files and paste them in here, and then we change things, and hopefully we can kind of distill that down a little bit. But for now, I'm just going to make it, and then we can clean it up and make it nicer later. So as an example, let's look at get list, right? So here is our handler for the get list operation. So there's some additional things here that weren't here last time that are specific to the list operation. And this is where it starts to make sense that it would be achievable, but it would be a lot of work to make kind of a general purpose list endpoint for all of our tables, because the kinds of sort operations, like how we want to sort, what do we want to sort by, what do we want to filter by. I'm not implementing, let's see, params. Right, pagination range, sort order, but I'm not even implementing filtering because we don't have any filtering right now. But all of these things, we could make a generic endpoint, but it's challenging to define what the types, like imagine a generic struct that represents all the parameters. I mean, we're already just string for things. And that's an option. But yeah, anyway, so what we're doing here is we're getting this range and sort and order out of params. One cute thing that I discovered, so if we look here at this params, we're using deserialize, which is coming from CRUD. But I think, yeah, so we have a custom deserializer for this range so that we can actually get start and end integers rather than just getting a JSON string with a list of 2 numbers, right? So we have this deserialized range. Copilot wrote this, but it seems to work, so I'm living with it. I mean, it seems to work, so I'm living with it. If it turns out it's broken, we'll fix it. It's one of those things. When I have a project like this, I just want something that works, and I can just let things go until they force my attention. Okay, so anyway, so here's get list. Now for get one, I think it's interesting. We are going to need some of these things. And I'm going to go ahead and just grab all of the uses, except for params. We won't need params because we're not taking any query parameters in here. We will take a, what is it called? It's not query. Body stream, connect info, host, JSON, matched path. Oh, path. I think it's path. ID. There we go. Except this is not an integer. This is going to be a string. And let's see what Copilot does here. So, so far so good. We are getting a stream record. Ooh, now I've not implemented this, I think. Like, this is not a thing. But we could implement that. That potentially, because right now in get list, right, what we do is we have this closure, which transforms the stream view into... wait, I'm confused. Oh, no. It transforms the stream into a stream view. Yes. But if our stream view had an implementation of from, and hopefully Copilot has done the reasonable thing of copying and pasting. Stream ID title thumbnail URL becomes thumbnail, created at, updated at, becomes strings. Topic IDs is an empty vec. At some point we'll change this to actually get the topic IDs. Okay, so what does this do? So let me run through this, what I think this does, because my Rust is... So I have to say, for the sake of full disclosure, right? So I learned Rust 6+ years ago. It's changed not seemingly all that much since then. But, you know, I wrote a translation of a re-implementation of one of my old C++ libraries in Rust as a practice project like 6 years ago. And that's, I think 2 years after that, I tried to do some maintenance on it, but very limited experience with Rust. And now I've been getting back into Rust for the last couple of weeks, just kind of jumping into the deep end, really, right? Just trying to like write code rather than I'm not, you know, other than docs for problem solving, you know, at the time when I run into things, I'm not looking at like tutorials or any of that stuff. I'm just like solving problems as they come up and forcing kind of solving the, you know, working on this project to guide me to learning what I need to know, which probably means I am not doing things idiomatically. There are like potentially foot guns, if you will, in the things that I'm doing that I'm just not aware of. So we'll see how things go. But that caveat out there, what we're doing here is we're providing an implementation of this from method so that if we have a wait, shouldn't this be the other way though? What were we trying to do? Like we were trying to go from a stream to a stream view. So wouldn't we... What is impl from? Here, you know what? Copilot, explain this. I don't use this enough. All right. It helpfully informs us that this is a line of code written in Rust. This is implementing the from trait for the stream view type with stream as the source type. In Rust, from and into are simple and useful traits that are used for generic conversions across types. We're saying that we want to provide a way to convert a stream into a stream view. Okay, so Copilot is saying this is the thing we want. Okay, so let's see. I mean, this looks right as a way to take a stream and make a stream view. And if we actually had that type available from our models, that seems to compile. So if we go back to get one, now this seems to compile and we do get a stream view. So stream view here is this struct that I'm using to define what the API returns. right? So when you get a stream using, you do a get to this URL, you get these fields, right? And so that this struct inside of CRUD API SRC handler stream structs defines that on the Rust side of things. So if we take that and we just say, I don't know if we need that's not right. Hold on. What does it? Yeah, this is not right. If we look at get list, how are we returning this? We're doing a tuple or a tuple, and I think we just take the stream view and we JSONify it with the SRD JSON macro, and this is the header we want though. We want to set the content type. I mean, we probably want to do that in the other one as well. Okay, and that compiles. So in get list, we really should be including content type application JSON in here, right? Why is this complaining? Expected string found str. But this isn't complaining? Is this like an ordering thing? If we did this? Oh, they have to have the same type. Consider borrowing here. Nope, doesn't like that. It was a bad suggestion. Expected at ampersand str found string. Creates a string using interpolation and runtime expressions. It's a format string. Okay. And so we have a string, but this expression here is to string or to str. Okay, it's happy. This is a thing that trips me up coming from like TypeScript, is that what's another example of this? Oh, well, I don't have it around anymore, but as I was trying to implement get list, where we would handle multiple different types of tables, and I was trying to use like a match and a case. Actually, this might be an example as well, right? Where we are trying to return different ascending or descending expressions based on the sort order. Well, ascending is of type DSL ASC. Descending is of type DSL DSC. They're different types, and you cannot, you can't have the different what do they call them, arms of the match return different types. So the solution that was suggested was to use box to put them in a box, and so the type is kind of hidden away inside of the box, and then now we have a box that contains the order, and this seems to transparently handle the fact that it's a boxed order when we call order by through whatever magic that I don't understand, because I'm learning Rust too. But that was the solution there, and I don't know if we could do something different, but that seems like overkill. Anyway, so now we're returning the content type of application JSON, which is probably what we want. I think it was doing that anyway, somehow. But now we are explicitly saying that, and that's probably not a bad thing. Now we have a get one. We should also go ahead and add the delete and update ones. I'm not going to implement them yet because I want to test this by calling the API. But I do want to define something so that main.rs, so all of this compiles, right? Because we won't be able to compile if we don't have these things defined. I don't need that used anymore. So let's go ahead and copy this, and we'll say This is delete stream, and let's just have an empty response. What should a delete return? Like it should have a status code, right? I think the response body should be empty. Do we have an example? I might just pull up the Axum docs. Axum Rust. Need that Rust there because I've tried searching for Axum too many times, gotten unrelated things. So responses. Oh, we can do this. How do we see response for more details? Here we go. Header server, content type. What if I just want to turn to status? Oh yeah, status code. I know I've done that before, but status code. What is the appropriate status codes return for a delete? MDN might tell us. If the action will likely succeed but has not yet been enacted, we will expect in this case that the record will be deleted by the time we return. 204, no content. If the action has been enacted, no further information is to be supplied. 200, if the action has been enacted and the response message includes a representation describing the status. So I don't intend to return a body, so we'll do no content. We will eventually need some of these things, so I'm going to leave those imports in place. I don't think we need a header. Okay, and then update. I'm just gonna have it return okay for now. It'll be, we'll actually return, response body once we implement this, but update stream. I just want to get something there so that this stops yelling, and then we can use our task to run the CRUD API. And let me get Postman going too. All right, we're on 8789 for some reason. Was the port that I picked? Failed to deserialize query string. Missing field range. So here's something that we added, right? So we're expecting, React admin to pass in a range. We're not handling the case where it doesn't. Also, this is not going to work because I think let's see. Like we should be trying to talk to the database. But is it even running? And is it available? So there are no running containers. So let's see here. Docker compose up. We'll use the top level one. Let's look at our database and a version of the CRUD API and other stuff. But at least the version that is running in Cargo Watch will reload if we make file changes, so that'll be handy to have. I see we have a few viewers in. Welcome. Feel free if you have questions to ask. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of steamroll ahead. Lots to do on this project, and yeah. Aw, something didn't work. What was the problem? Could not compile CRUD API due to previous errors. Could not read SRC main.rs, no such file or directory. I guess it's possible that adding the top level cargo toml could have broken this. Oh, it maybe. Let me stop this as well. Potentially this running also interfered with it working, with it building. So let's try that first. So I stopped the cargo watch. Maybe that was preventing the file from being read. Now I'm running Docker Compose up so that we can have the database running. Because I have a Postgres database and a Redis server, and then the front end, the React admin front end running inside of Vite, and the CRUD API itself, and the AI API all running inside of Docker Compose. Actually, did I put the AI API? Well, let's look at that Docker file. Docker Compose file. So we have front end. It's node 18 on Alpine. And then we have CRUD API and DB and Redis. So, okay, so I don't have the AI API running in here yet, but we could. I guess we're not actually ready for that yet, though, because we also need to set up Nginx or something to proxy. Okay, that wasn't it. Could not compile CRUD API. Bin CRUD API due to previous errors. Could not read SOC main.rs. OS error 2. No such file or directory. Why is this not working today? Let's close all of the files and try that one more time. Just in case it's something to do with that. The other thing I could do is that I see that the VS Code, like the way this is running Docker Compose up, is it's doing -- build. So it's triggering new builds. I don't actually care about that right now. So I could just run the command manually. But I'm kind of curious because this was working last stream. So it probably should still work now. My gut feel is that the biggest thing related to kind of the build process that's changed is I did, above all the individual microservices, add that top level cargo.toml, and maybe that is somehow interfering with this. Let me try one thing and then we'll actually let me do this. So let's say this. Docker Compose up. I probably wanted a -d. Let's do that again. I do just want this stuff running in the background. Yeah, come on. Anyway, while that's thinking, so here's our Docker file that we're using to build our Rust API services. I think it's failing somewhere in here. Let's take a look here. Where was it failing? It was failing run cargo chef cook release recipe path. Cargo chef cook release recipe. Okay, this here is failing. workdir app copy dot workdir. What if we delete top? Yeah. What if we did that? Okay, so if I just run this from here, it will include -- build, and we'll see if removing that top level cargo lock and cargo toml will fix the problem. If so, then we know the cause. Now again, that top level file only exists to make it easier to do stuff in VS Code. So if this works, it works. If this doesn't work, then something else is wrong, and I have no idea what. So fingers crossed. In the meantime, we should have a database now. So, yep, there it is. Let's go back to Postman, and if I send this request, oh, it's not running, right? Because I stopped it. Well, this is doing its thing. Let's run. Let's do all the things all at once. Cargo watch. Some complaints, but we're running. How's this doing? Okay, we passed the part that was failing before, so I think potentially some interaction with cargo chef and other stuff with the top level cargo.toml that just has like our workspace settings seems to have been the problem. So just having the Docker file remove that seems to have fixed the problem. And we'll see, let's go back to cargo watch. So we can see the kind of the debug tracing here. We got the request that came in. We are in our handler, get streams list. We see the range, we parsed it, 0 to 10. Sort none, order none. But still failed. Why fail? Oh, right. So the service, let's take a look at tasks.json. So we didn't provide an environment variable telling it how to access the database. env for CRUD API. Okay, so I think something like this. Oops. Now, it's kind of problematic. But for localhost, I'm fine with this for just like local testing. So I need to stop the service and then run cargo watch again, CRUD API. It's interesting though. So that tells me that we're not doing any validation to make sure the database URL exists, which is kind of unfortunate. That should be happening inside of somewhere. Oh. Let's see, db.rs. Interesting. So when we create poll, what is expect supposed to do here? It's supposed to panic, right? If the value is an error, the panic message. So why didn't this panic before? Instead, we timed out. Doing what? Or, oh yeah, there is a .env file. Maybe it was reading the .env file. All right, because I'm running it locally. Right. Oh, you know what? I mean, probably what we could do is we can get rid of this stuff. Yeah. And then in our .env file, make sure all of these things are set. Localhost. I think this is going to make sense because before it was DB, because we were using the .env file inside of the Docker container, and now the database URL is being passed in the Docker Compose settings for CRUD API. It is, right? Yes. Okay. So I think this will be better to have these things here. Just need to fix the formatting. Okay. In the meantime, I think this should be working. Let's go to Postman. There we go. And now we can see our results, which I don't recall if this was working on the first stream, but I got this working after. Anyway, what I'm after here is the ID here. So then we can duplicate this tab and we can go to streams/that ID and get that, and we get the record. So we can see that that's working. And in real life, I might use some kind of tooling to make these higher level automation integration tests, right? That would actually exercise API endpoints and verify reasonable responses and those sorts of things. But this is my personal project, and I think it'll be fine. If I break it, then I get the fun of fixing it later. Okay, so we have get list, we have get one, we have create, which sort of works. There's still, like, I'm just ignoring this whole topic IDs thing. Probably what I need to do is, I have a couple of options for that, right? In terms of like database design, because I can definitely just have a column on the streams table that has a list. There's a couple of different ways to represent that in Postgres. Like either, I think there's like list data types, and you could also like use JSON, JSON B columns, which I'm a big fan of. Or you could have like an intermediate table, like a many-to-many table that relates streams to topic IDs. That gets a little weird. I mean, I guess it does, because I probably am going to both relate streams and episodes to topics. Like a stream potentially could have, like, take this stream. I'm hoping at some point today, this morning, I'm going to get into some like React admin stuff. And so the stream overall will have like Rust backend, microservice API topics, and then also React web development. It's just like the tags on the stream right now. But the episodes that I'm wanting to be able to extract from this may have like a subset. So anyway, I'm inclined to have like a list column type. Maybe like a UUID list. I think that might even be possible on the stream table. In which case, this might actually be pretty straightforward. We just like pull that and we deserialize that and drop it in here. But we'll do that when we do it. So delete. Let's do delete. So we get the connection from the pool. We find the thing by ID because we have the ID from the path. We find the first one, and then we tell it to delete. This is interesting. What is it trying to do here? Expected mute. Also a semicolon there. Creates a delete statement. Delete, execute. Okay, I think I don't need this, right? I just need something like that. Yeah, execute async is not a real thing. Good try. Unnecessary parentheses around block return value. Okay, we can just do this then. And then we don't need the model. We don't need JSON. A very important thing, if you, and this is something I ran into several times, and so it's worth calling out here. If you use Diesel and Diesel Async with Tokyo, you're gonna want this use Diesel Async run query TSL. Not necessarily for this, but for these other queries. Queries where I'm using the DSL. That's a domain-specific language. Like here, streams.limit.offset.order by. This stuff, if you do this and you have not imported DSL async run query DSL, you're gonna get all sorts of errors when you try to reference the connection. About it being the wrong type or something along those lines. Here, let's see what that looks like. So if I comment this out, yeah, then you see trait bound BB8 API pooled connection. So this is our connection pooling crate BB8 that we then have features enabled in DSL async to utilize. But you can see DSL query DSL load query. Blah, 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 blah. It's not satisfied by whatever. So if you see that kind of error, maybe you're missing the run query DSL. Okay, so what now? Well, we implemented delete, maybe. Our service restarts as soon as we save, so maybe you can actually try that. If I duplicate this tab and I change this to a delete operation and I send it, we get a 204 no content. And if I try to get this record again, it crashed. Okay, we should probably not crash when we try to retrieve a record that doesn't exist. Just a thought. Tokyo runtime worker panicked. Resultant wrap on an error value not found. Get 128. Yeah. Delete's gonna have the same thing, but let's look at get one, and let's look how to fix this, right? So what's happening here is we call unwrap. Probably we want to have better error handling here. Like if we panic in the handler, that should be like a 500 error. In fact, let's take some notes. Okay, if handlers panic, handlers handle panic, and a 500 error is returned to the client. Okay. So that's a thing we want to do. We also want to say if a query finds no results, a 404 error is returned to the client, right? I mean, those are reasonable things. Although maybe, depending on your circumstances, you'll see this, right? An example would be if you're not logged in, or if you are not part of an organization on GitHub, excuse me, on GitHub, and you try to go to a repo, and that repo exists, but you don't have permissions, like you're not part of the organization and it's a private repo, or it's a private repo that you would have permission to access, but you're not logged in. And you go to it, you just get a 404 error, right? It's, if you said, wait, where am I going with this? A different circumstance. Never mind. I'm thinking of a different circumstance. Anyway, so that, right, because we're not implementing permissions here. Anyway, okay. 404s and 400s and errors triggers that whole chain of thought in my head. But it's not applicable here, so never mind. So instead of unwrapping here, right, because if we unwrap and we don't find a record, apparently that is going to, we're going to, like, why? That's interesting. Why is Rust Analyzer? Oh, it crashed. Maybe. Unsupported character. Brilliant. Huh. Oh, there we go. We're getting some more previews of what the types are here. Regardless, so there's some kind of result object that we're getting from the await here. And what we want to do is, instead of unwrapping that, we want to match like this. Yeah, this looks actually kind of all right. So what we want to do is we want to say, with this result, now this is wrong. That's not the right type. Results. Okay, let's take this. There we go. So now we can see the result type here. It can't figure out what that result type is. But hopefully the compiler will. And then we can get rid of this. Right, so basically what we're saying is, so a result is an enum that has two values. And they're essentially a T and an E are the kind of the parameterized types for this enum. Which is pretty interesting, coming from like TypeScript, which maybe you don't use enums at all. But here, you can have these this result enum that can either be an OK or an error, and inside of the OK or the error are either like a value, a result, or what the error was, right? Either success or failure. And so then we can match on that, and we can say if the type, this outer type, is an OK, we can get the result outside of, from the inside of the OK, and we can use that. So that result here, which shadows, which does seem to be idiomatic in Rust, is shadowing it like this. So we have now this result in this scope, which shadows this result, and the type of result here is a stream. Although we're not saying that explicitly here, and Rust Analyzer seems to not be catching up. But regardless, it's a stream, and we convert it into a stream view using our from implementation, and then we use that to return some JSON. And then if there's an error, in getting this. Presumably that's because we couldn't find the record, so we return a not found. Now, we don't have that imported, so we can import that. And then it complains about the tuple, but we can potentially not do that. So match arms have incompatible types. So how do we do that? How do we do this in a way that... See, they still have incompatible types because this is a tuple with headers and a body, and this is a different kind of tuple. So it's the wrong type. I bet there's an example in the Axum docs that shows kind of how you might want to do this. Let's see, do I have that? Here we go. So the way I solved that before in a different circumstance was to box the different values. Ooh. Into response. Okay. If you need to return multiple response types, but your function has to return one type, right? And in this case, our match needs to, all the arms need to resolve into the same type. So it looks like we can use into response to turn things into an Axum response. So maybe we can do this. All right. Okay, and now this is complaining because it doesn't know what the type is. It doesn't know the type of the thing that we are dealing with here for some reason. But we can just annotate this as a result of a stream. Can we get away with that? No. Stream unknown. Can we just do underscore here? Can you infer the rest? Apparently so. That worked. All right. My coffee has been sitting here ignored for too long. Okay. So that seems to be okay. If we go back to the terminal, a lot has happened. But it's listening again. So now if we get one, previously we got socket hang up. So we should get a 404 now. Success. It's a failure. Okay. Now, if we go back to delete, and we tried to delete the record that doesn't exist, it says 204 no content. Now, that's interesting. I don't know that that's a problem, right? Like if you write a delete query on the database, delete from streams where ID equals 346 whatever, it's just going to say, oh, I deleted 0 rows. But that's not an error. So that's kind of the behavior we're seeing here. I do want to fix this other issue, though. If the handler panics, we return a 500 error instead of crashing. But to test that, what we're going to do is we're going to force a panic. Like so. We'll rebuild. And we're going to go back to Postman, and we're going to go to this, and we're going to hit send. And we got a socket hang up. Okay. So how do we handle this? I don't know. In our common API lib, so this is the little library crate I built internally for the app that is kind of our generic, like, here's how you build an API, here's how you set up the tracer, here's how you set up the app, which is just the router, get the host import and all of these things. We have a server here, we have app make into service, we have an app function that adds all these different layers. Now, if we look at the Axum docs, I bet there's probably something about how to have error handling. Maybe there's a middleware for that. Commonly used middleware. Timeout layer is interesting. Compression cores trace request ID, propagate request ID. This is worth noting. I mean, I think this is this makes sense in terms of like what middleware does, right? So you have these layers. And the layers are invoked. Layer 3 and then 2 and then 1, and then your handler, and then 1 and 2 and 3. Kind of like decorators. Error handling. Okay, Axum is based on Tower Service, which bundles errors through the associated error type. If you have a service that produces an error and the error makes it all the way up to hyper, the connection will be terminated without sending a response. It's not desirable, so Axum makes sure you always produce a response by relying on the type system. Does it by requiring all services to have an infallible as their error type. Okay. I see. So I think the problem is, let's go back to get list. So this breaks everything. Having a panic or using unwrap, which because this function may panic, its use is generally discouraged. So instead of let's see, things I want to do. Can we customize our linting? What's doing linting for us? Well, not Rust Analyzer. It seems to be broken. Let me remove this panic. Let's look at extensions. Do I have a separate linter, or is it just Rust Analyzer? Code completion, types, semantic, syntax highlighting, type. Can we filter for installed? What do I already have? Maybe look at enabled things that have to do with Rust. Okay, just Rust Analyzer and Rust Test Explorer. Which I haven't. I was checking to see if it would actually work earlier. So we can see we don't have a lot of unit tests. We just have one, but it passes, so there's that. That's a thing I am slacking on. Let's see. Can we... Ideally, what I would want, looking at this, is probably something that's going to give me a warning or an error if I use unwrap anywhere. And you can see I use it a bunch of places. And that is problematic because there's not really... So Axum is set up so that these handlers, when they are not panicking, will always return an error. that tells that can be returned back to the client, and we are defeating that. We're defeating that by doing what we're doing. Okay, so the real answer is to replace everywhere we're using unwrap. Except perhaps, probably here in create pool, aside. No, this is fine. So this happens during application initialization. I think that's a fine place to have just the app panic and just bail out. So let's dismiss that one. Another place is here where we're starting up the server. We're verifying that everything is good or failing. And that's a fine place to just unwrap here and in our test. So that's fine. But these other places, we need to use match. Let's think about that for a second, right? Just checking the time really quick. I am going to be stepping away shortly for just a few minutes to put away my coffee cup and get some water. But let me finish my thought before that. So if we are awaiting getting a connection from the pool, either we fail to get that connection for whatever reason, or we succeed. If we succeed, we want to put that mutable connection and assign it to the name connection. If we fail, we want to return a 500 error, probably. How do we do that? How do we bail out in a way that returns a 500 error? Let's look at the Axiom docs, because surely they show kind of how we should do error handling in our request. Nope. Running extractors for error handling? Let's look at the handler docs. So let's do some Googling. Rust match return. So here is the match control flow construct. And here's the Stack Overflow post. Right, so here someone seeming with the same sort of problem, right, where we're doing a thing and it could fail, and we want to just like get out of the enclosing scope, right, out of the function where this is happening. But if we succeed, then we want to take that value and put it into here. Yeah, except we don't want to return back to here. Return always returns from a function. Okay. From a function. So, right. This is not a function. Right? This is part of a match expression. And what I'm taking from this person's response here, Ollie here, is that return always returns from a function. This is not a function, right? This is one of the arms of your match expression. Let's see what this the Rust programming language book says. Think of a match expression as being like a coin sorting machine. Coins slide down a track with various size holes along it. Each coin falls through the first hole it encounters that it fits into. Kind of like a switch statement, except much more powerful. Values go through each pattern in a match, and the first pattern the value fits, the value falls into the associated code block. Do they talk about return in here? So you don't have to use curly braces for the match arm, like here. Six results, and none are actually using the return keyword in code. But I'm pretty sure that if we were to say, instead of unwrap, we match. Ooh, like this. Copilot did all the work for us, maybe, except for the fact that, oh hey, mismatched types. But we've already solved this problem, right? So we already know that we can just do into response, right? So we can see here that if we were to do dot into response, then those types line up. And now we're not using unwrap. We are saying, okay, we successfully got the connection, but if there was an error to do with getting the connection from the pool, we'll trace that error. And this right here is the best part of having code gen through large language model, Copilot, whatever. Is that I mean, this is a fine error message, and it's good enough, and the whole thing is good enough, and this is right. We probably already have status code. Oh, we didn't. Okay, so that's fine. If we had status code imported, then I would probably get rid of these, but this is fine. This is just fine. Now we just need to do the same exercise here for the record, except it'll be a 404. So let's finish this file, and then I'm gonna take that break. So we match this whole shebang, and we say, okay, if we got a record, it's good. Otherwise, we got an error. But yeah, actually, let's talk about this. So this is an insert, right? This is an insert. So if this errors, that means we failed to insert the record. And that is probably on the server. It's unlikely to be, it's not a 404, it's not a 400, it's not a 401 or a 403. It's not a, I'm a teapot. It is probably an internal server error if we fail to do the insert, because theoretically we would have had done validation of the input prior to getting here. We haven't, but we should. There is some neat things you can do with using Derive. I think there's like a validation crate, and you can do stuff. Anyway, we're not doing that here, but we could, and we should. Before we try to insert into the database, we should be validating data. But regardless, if we get an error here, it probably makes sense that it is a 500 error. And so those are the only unwraps in create. Before we go, I think I don't have. Okay, so let's duplicate a tab. I don't even have it in the history. Anyway, so we'll post to record streams. Yeah, a body. It's gonna be raw. It's gonna be JSON, And what does it look like? Well, it should have a title. It needs a title and a prefix. Oh, right. So the way I did this last time to test out the creation of the record was that I did it in the UI. But it's handy to have test 3 prefix 2023 1128, and then success. We got our record, and then we can delete it, or we can get it. So if we get it, there it is. There's our record, test 3, success, and then we can delete it. 204 no content, and then if we try to get it again, 404 not found. If we try to get the list of records, apparently there aren't any. That's interesting. Are there really no records? Sorry, I keep threatening to take a break and then I get into a thing. That will be the cliffhanger. Are there really no records, or is there something wrong with our list endpoint? Find out in the continuation. Okay, so I'm gonna take a little break here and put on this screen, and I'll be back in just a few minutes. For folks on YouTube, I imagine the second part of the VOD will go live the next day. So sorry for the delay. All right, BRB.